Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Smashing Pumpkins' 1995 double album is one of the best selling albums of all time, and to this day, it's seen as a hallmark of the 90s music scene, a key intersection of the alternative underground and mainstream pop culture. But, is it a high point? Is it truly the classic that many think it is? In this video, we'll make that determination once and for all. But first, hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and let me know what's on your mind in the comments below. So my first introduction to Smashing Pumpkins was via my older brother. Somewhere around 1990 or 91, he started getting into what was then the still underground alternative scene. He was listening to bands like Pixies, Jane's Addiction, and Smashing Pumpkins. It was either Gish or the Lull EP, but I remember being immediately struck by Rhinoceros. I'd never heard a song like that before. Just that lovely dreaminess that Rhinoceros summarizes, really, just kind of hits you with. And what was the song about? Not a rhinoceros, at least not as far as I could tell from my impression of the lyrics. And that was my first impression of Smashing Pumpkins, was this like really dreamy music, like transporting and really abstract lyrical content. Not exactly difficult to connect with, but it wasn't so much about the lyrics. The lyrics almost seemed to be more of the background and almost like another instrument for the songs. And you see this in a lot of their song titles from their early albums, right? Just like weird sorts of names. Slunk, just like those one-word titles that don't really tell you much, okay? A few years later, Siamese Dream came out. It was a massive hit. I bought it and I lost interest for a variety of reasons, one of which was probably overexposure, right? You had Disarm, Today. Those two songs, their videos on MTV, they were just constantly on rotation. And, I was kind of getting into some more like music that was actually underground at that time. And so, it's like, oh, that's Smashing Pumpkins. They're kind of like sellouts and everything like that. And their songs are just all over the place. And Billy Corgan's kind of whiny and blah, blah, blah. But to my shame, I didn't really appreciate the genius of Siamese Dream for many years. If only I'd listened to Hummer and Soma more than Disarm and Today. Hummer, so those songs, just incredible, incredible guitar rock songs. Some other time I'm going to talk about Siamese Dream because what a fantastic album. So when Melancholy arrived in 1995, I had already chosen to ignore Smashing Pumpkins. It didn't help that Bullet with Butterfly Wings seemed overly angsty to me, like a caricature of Nirvana. While I did eventually appreciate 1979 when it arrived as a single, I figured it was a fluke. And by the way, how does Smashing Pumpkins not have a song called Fluke? That seems like an utterly Smashing Pumpkins song title. So, do with that what you will. I didn't really come back to the Smashing Pumpkins until sometime in the late 2000s when I decided to give Gish and Siamese Dream another look. I discovered for myself what great albums those were, but I still didn't have an appreciation for Melancholy. It seemed to me that despite the greatness of a few key tracks therein, it was the moment Corgan had jumped the shark, taking a proggy conceptual turn away from the abstract dream pop guitar excursions that made Gish and Siamese Dream such classics. In short, Melancholy seemed like the moment Corgan had become a try-hard kind of guy. And while it had paid off for him in terms of sales, he'd left behind what made Smashing Pumpkins great before. Or so I thought for many years. Well, I'm happy to say that I was wrong about Melancholy. It's been a slow process for me, but with the perspective of many years of hindsight and probably some nostalgia and seeing a lot of other people, vouch for this album and even remembering at the time how many people love this album, I can totally appreciate the absurdly ambitious genius of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. The bottom line is, I've realized you have to surrender to the epic journey of it all. This is a song cycle about massive teenage emotions, and it's incredibly well done. And really, I don't know that anyone other than Corgan was capable of pulling this off. There's a directness here that was absent from most of Smashing Pumpkins' early material. No better example than Bullet with Butterfly Wings, which really does sound like a Nevermind outtake, Nevermind outtake that Corgan added his own lyrics to. On Melancholy, Smashing Pumpkins matured their sound by going back to their adolescence. That's the perfect paradox for a guy like Corgan. Never the cool kid, always the weird genius that no one really understands. When when most of the people, most of the cool kids are going this way, he's going that way, right? And it's not because he's like trying to rebel against them necessarily. It's just like that's who he is, right? His fascinations seem to lie elsewhere. Production wise, Corgan's vocals are clearer here than on their first two albums, right? Like I mentioned earlier, on those first records, really all of their early songs, Corgan's vocals are almost indistinct. You can't really pick out all of the word, most of the words along the way. Maybe he gives you something here or there to hang on to, maybe Disarm and Today, or maybe the two tracks that they're the only exceptions to that rule. But most of the other early Smashing Pumpkins songs from those first two albums in that era, really indirect lyrics, hard to understand, kind of impressionistic feel when you can make them out. But right here, it's like there's a directness not only to the content, but also to the production of the vocals. And just speaking of the production, it's fantastic. I don't know that I've heard a better sounding album from the 90s. There are moments that can be described as grungy, like Here Is No Why and Where Boys Fear to Tread, but none of it sounds murky, even the heaviest moments. It's the sound of the grunge band that was never really accepted by the other grunge bands, kissing grunge goodbye, or something like that. But all in all, I'm astounded by the quality of the songs. While I think it could have been a few songs shorter towards the end, I'm not going to complain because by around track 20, why not? Most of the tracks are great, and there are more than a handful of classics. 1979, of course, may be the greatest song of the 90s. I mean, you ask me at any given time, I'll pick probably different ones, but no doubt it's one of the top 10 best songs. Just a totally iconic track. Deservedly, people keep on coming back to it and back to it. It's just such an incredibly special song, a total mark of genius, something that you just think, like, that's not, like, no human being wrote that. That was more just, like, channeled through this one guy, right, from some greater power, greater mind above it, right? Or almost just like this collective consciousness channeled through one guy. Just a brilliant, brilliant song. And it's rivaled by Tonight, another utterly beautiful, genius song, one of the great tracks of the 90s. Those two may be, in the top 10 of the 90s right there. But then you get Zero, one of the coolest guitar riffs I've ever heard. I'm a total sucker for, like, the heavy harmonic kind of sound, really any harmonics when it comes to guitar, well executed. And that riff, man, it's just it just sticks with you. It's so angry, but it's like, and it's grungy, but it's not grungy at the same time. The production, again, what an incredibly well produced hard guitar rock song. And it doesn't rely on the kind of production that came before. There's a cleanness to it that must have been really hard to capture, but it's just incredibly well done. You get throwbacks to their early sound like Galapagos and Porcelina and Ruby, thrashers like Jelly Belly and Tales of a Scorched Earth, borderline heavy metal like XYU, and hidden gems like Muzzle and 33. 33 is one that, I've only really come to appreciate in the last couple of years. Didn't really ever hear it back then. I don't even remember it being a single, but apparently it was. But it's just a really beautiful song. Kind of, you put the 1979 Tonight and 33 together, and they're almost like this, like, just beautiful, utterly beautiful concept. You think of, like, Use Your Illusion, right? And how Don't Cry, Estranged, November Rain are supposedly like these three songs that go together. I think of 33, Tonight, and 1979 in that same vein. These are these three songs, like just these like odes, nostalgic odes to youth that just seem to go together and are just incredibly special, beautiful songs. So yeah, I finally arrived where many of you already are. Melancholy is indeed a total classic and may even be the best album of the 90s, or at least 95. I mean, there's the Bends. So me, I'm a Radiohead guy. That's hard to, say it's better than the Bends. It's definitely more ambitious than the Bends. But let me go with that for a second. While around their third album, most bands tend to get more abstract than direct, Smashing Pumpkins did the opposite. Consider OK Computer versus the Bends, or Fables of the Reconstruction versus Reckoning and Murmur. Most bands are going in the abstract. They start out kind of more direct and go in the abstract direction right around the third and fourth albums. Well, Smashing Pumpkins did the opposite. Started out very abstract in their sound, very abstract in their lyrical content, and became more direct, right, with Melancholy, and then from then on. There goes Corgan always doing his own thing. Well, my newfound appreciation for this milestone of the Pumpkins catalog has me wanting to revisit the rest of their later catalog. So if you enjoyed this review, then stay tuned by hitting the subscribe button. And let's continue the conversation in the comments. Tell me your favorite track off of Melancholy. Right there, do it right now. Boom, you got it. What makes this such a great album, or not so great, if that's your opinion? Again, comments, let's talk about it. So thanks for watching, you guys, and I will talk at you next time. Bye-bye.